How did Native Americans build their winter dwellings? What tools did they use? Today we will learn all the details. I will reveal the main secrets and methods of Native Americans. When the icy wind rushes across the endless plains and snow covers the ground with a thick blanket, survival becomes an art. The indigenous peoples of North America did not have modern insulation, tools, or blueprints, but their winter dwellings were true masterpieces of engineering, perfectly adapted to the harsh climate. These structures were not just a roof over their heads, but an entire system, harmoniously integrated into the surrounding world. They combined knowledge of physics, a deep understanding of materials, and centuries-old traditions. Their architecture was a response to the challenges of nature, honed to perfection. The secrets of their construction were passed down from generation to generation, allowing entire tribes to thrive where others could not survive for a single day. This is not a story about primitive huts, but about complex and effective survival technologies. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn how Native Americans created warm and cozy homes in the middle of a snow-covered desert, using only what nature provided them. What if I told you that the winter dwellings of the Native Americans were smarter than many modern homes? They did not fight nature, but cooperated with it, using the wind, sun, and snow to their advantage. At the heart of this architecture was a deep philosophy of unity with the surrounding world. For indigenous peoples, a home was not just an inanimate structure, it was perceived as a living organism that breathed, protected, and provided warmth. Every element, from the wooden frame to the skins covering it, had its own meaning and purpose. These dwellings were not static, they changed with the seasons. In summer, they provided coolness and ventilation, and in winter, they turned into impregnable fortresses that stored precious heat. Such adaptability was the key to survival in a harsh continental climate. The main principle was to use local and renewable resources: trees, animal skins, grass, bark. Everything was put to use. This not only ensured the availability of materials, but also made the dwelling part of the local landscape. Mobility also played a key role, especially for the nomadic tribes of the Great Plains. Their homes could be quickly dismantled, transported to a new location, and reassembled. It was an architecture of movement, not statics. Efficiency was valued over monumentality. Instead of building thick stone walls, they used multi-layered structures and air gaps. This allowed for maximum thermal insulation, with minimum weight and material consumption. The shape of the dwelling was also not accidental. The conical or dome structure had ideal aerodynamic properties, withstanding the strongest winds. It also promoted proper circulation of warm air inside. Thus, an Indian dwelling is not just a set of materials, but embodied wisdom. It is a system where each element works in harmony with the others and with the environment. It was both simple and incredibly complex. We would love to hear your opinion. What do you think about this approach to construction based on harmony with nature? Write about it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on other amazing stories. Are you ready to learn the surprising truth about the most famous and recognizable Native American dwelling? The tepee or wigwam. Its graceful conical silhouette has become a universal symbol of the indigenous peoples of the Great Plains of North America. But behind this apparent simplicity lies an ingenious, well-thought-out design refined over centuries. The tepee was the ideal mobile home for a nomadic lifestyle, inextricably linked to the seasonal migrations of huge herds of bison across the prairies. Form followed function. The nomadic lifestyle required a portable dwelling, and the tepee was the perfect answer to this survival challenge. The basis of the entire tepee structure was a sturdy frame made of long, straight wooden poles or poles. Usually 12 to 20 poles, 5-7 meters long, made of thin-stemmed pine or fragrant mountain juniper, were used for one tepee. These particular tree species were especially valued for their natural bending strength, ease of transport, and naturally straight trunks without crooks. The ideal pole was straight as an arrow, light as a feather, but strong as a bone. Finding and preparing such poles was an art that required knowledge of the forest and trees. The installation of the frame always began with the creation of a tripod or four-legged base support. 3 or 4 of the strongest and longest poles were tied together securely at the top with a leather strap and carefully placed vertically on the ground, forming a stable initial cone with a wide base. This initial tripod served as a supporting structure for all the other additional poles that would be added. The tripod was the foundation, the skeleton, without which nothing would hold. The 3 points of support created stability on any uneven prairie surface. The remaining poles were sequentially and evenly attached with one end to the main bundle at the top, forming a lattice fan-shaped structure of the desired diameter in a circle. The diameter of the base of a typical family teepee could reach 5 to 6 meters, providing an interior area of about 20 to 30 square meters. The entire frame structure was strong enough to be stable, yet flexible enough to effectively withstand the strong, gusty winds of the plains, swaying but not breaking. Flexibility was strength. The rigid breaks, the flexible survives under the pressure of the elements. When the wooden frame was ready and stable, it was completely covered with a special large blanket, painstakingly sewn from carefully processed and tanned bison hides, usually 8 to 12 hides per teepee. This heavy cover, or blanket, weighing tens of kilograms, had a characteristic semicircular or semi-oval shape. It was very heavy and required the combined efforts of several strong men to lift it up and secure it properly on the tall frame without damage. The cover was the main treasure. Poles could be found in the forest, but the preparation of the hides required months of work by the women of the tribe, so it was the true wealth of the family. The cover was not simply thrown carelessly over the poles, but methodically wrapped around the conical frame in a spiral from bottom to top. At the front, where the edges of the canvas met vertically, they were tightly fastened with special wooden pins or pointed sticks through holes made in the fabric. This allowed the dwelling to be sealed tightly along its entire height, leaving no gaps for the wind to blow through between the edges of the tire. The pins were the zippers of their time, a simple but effective fastening mechanism without metal or complex parts. At the bottom around the perimeter, the cover was necessarily pressed to the ground with heavy stones or sprinkled with loose earth to seal it. This critically prevented cold air and drafts from entering the dwelling under the cover. The entrance to the teepee was usually oriented on the eastern side of the cone, facing the rising sun and its first rays. This had both a practical significance of protection from the western winds and a spiritual significance of welcoming the new day. The east was not chosen arbitrarily. It was chosen by generations of experience as the optimal direction for survival and comfort. The door to the teepee was a separate piece of thick hide stretched over a lightweight oval or teardrop-shaped wooden frame. It could be easily swung aside for entry and exit, or closed tightly to protect against inclement weather and at night. The entire structure of the teepee, from the base to the top, was thought out in minute detail by the craftsman. Each element had a purpose. Nothing was superfluous, only what was necessary for survival and comfort. The teepee was minimalist but functional. Not a single detail more than necessary, but not a single detail less. This ingenious design was the pinnacle of the evolution of nomadic mobile architecture. An entire camp of dozens of teepees could be completely dismantled in an hour of joint effort by the tribe. The poles and covers could be compactly loaded onto horses or dogs, and the journey in pursuit of the herd could begin immediately. And just as quickly, the entire camp could be reassembled in a new location that same evening, ready for the night. Mobility was survival. Those who moved quickly followed the bison, the source of all life for the tribe. What specific engineering detail do you think made the teepee not just a primitive tent made of skins, but a real, smart home with its own sophisticated climate control and ventilation system? The answer to this intriguing question awaits you in the next exciting chapter on the secrets of smoke flaps. I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of Native American architecture, how they created a smart home without electricity. The key to comfort inside the teepee lay in 3 elements: smoke vents, an inner lining, and the conical shape itself. This system provided warmth, ventilation, and protection from smoke. At the very top of the teepee, where the poles converged, there was an opening for smoke to escape. But it wasn't just a hole. 2 special wings or flaps were attached to the outside of the cover. each controlled by a separate pole. These smoke valves were an ingenious invention. With the help of poles, they could be rotated and set at different angles depending on the direction of the wind. This created a draft that effectively removed smoke from the hearth to the outside. Regardless of the wind direction, the valves could be positioned to protect the smoke hole and increase draft at the same time. In heavy rain or snowfall, they could be almost completely closed. This system was a simple and effective analog of a modern exhaust fan. The second most important element was the inner lining, or ozon in the Lakota language. It was a wide strip of skins or canvas about 1.5 to 2 meters high. It was attached to poles from the inside around the entire perimeter of the tepee. This lining did not touch the outer tire, creating an air gap between them. This gap acted like a thermos, significantly improving thermal insulation. Cold air that could seep under the edge of the outer tire did not enter the living space. It rose up through the air gap between the walls and exited through the smoke hole. This same airflow created additional draft for the smoke from the fire. Thus, the ozon solved 3 problems at once. It insulated, prevented drafts, and improved ventilation. The conical shape of the tepee itself also played an important role. Warm air from the hearth in the center rose evenly, displacing the smoke. The sloping walls reflected the heat from the fire down onto the people sitting around it. This created a constant cycle of air circulation inside the tepee. Fresh air entered from below, fed the fire, heated up, rose, and exited along with the smoke. It was a self-regulating heating and ventilation system. All these elements together made the tepee a surprisingly comfortable dwelling. Even in the most severe frosts, it was possible to keep warm inside. This was the result of centuries of observation and experimentation, perfected to perfection. Guess how many bison were needed to build one house? The answer depends on the size, but one average tepee required 12 to 18 bison hides. This material was the basis of life for the tribes of the Great Plains, providing them with food, clothing, and shelter. The process of transforming a rough hide into a durable and flexible covering for a tepee was long and laborious. First, the remains of fat and flesh were carefully scraped off the fresh hide. This work was done by women using special scrapers made of bone or stone. Then the hide was stretched out on the ground and secured with wooden pegs. It was left in the sun for several days to dry. After drying, the hide became hard and stiff, like a board. The next step was to remove the hair. The skin was soaked in water and then scraped again, but this time from the other side, removing all the hair. This was hard physical work that required great strength and skill. After that, the most important process began, tanning or softening. To make the skin soft and water-resistant, it was treated with a special compound made from the animal's brain and liver. These substances contained fats and emulsifiers that penetrated the structure of the skin. After applying the tanning compound, the skin was kneaded, rubbed, and stretched in all directions. It was pulled over a stretched rope or a special log. This process could take several days and required tremendous patience. As a result of this treatment, the skin became soft, like suede, and acquired a beautiful white or cream color. It was durable, elastic, and resistant to moisture. It was from such skins that the covering for the tepee was sewn. Individual treated skins were sewn together using animal tendons. The tendons were separated into thin threads, which shrunk as they dried, forming a very strong and waterproof seam. The cutting was complex, and its secrets were passed down from generation to generation. The finished covering was an incredibly valuable family possession. It served faithfully for many years, protecting against rain, wind, and snow. It was not just a shell, but real armor, created from the most important resource of the plains. Why did other tribes living in the forest build completely different houses? In the next chapter, you will learn about a dwelling whose frame could be bent with bare hands. In the dense deciduous forests of the northeastern North American continent, indigenous peoples, the Algonquians, Abenakis, and Lenape, built houses of a completely different shape, wigwams or wigwams. Unlike the conical teepees of the plains nomads, wigwams most often had a rounded dome or elongated oval shape, resembling a turtle. Its specific design was ideally suited to a sedentary life in a forest area with its resources and special climate. The shape reflected the environment. Where there were forests and no need for mobility, a different architecture emerged. more substantial and integrated into the landscape. The basis of the wigwam was a flexible frame made of young, thin living trees or saplings. For this purpose, young saplings of maple, elm, or willow, as thick as an arm, were specially selected, which could be easily bent into an arc without the risk of breaking. Their pointed ends were stuck deep into the ground around the perimeter of the future dwelling, forming a regular circle with a diameter of 3 to 5 meters or an oval for large families. The choice of tree was not accidental. These species combined flexibility with strength, creating the ideal material for a curved frame that could bend but not break under load. Then the tops of the opposite vertical trunks were methodically bent towards each other through the center and tightly tied together at a height of 2-3 meters. The result was a lattice dome structure of intersecting arcs, resembling an inverted wicker basket or gazebo. This organic frame was relatively light in weight, but at the same time very strong in compression and elastic thanks to the natural elasticity of living wood. Nature created the material, man just bent it correctly. Minimal processing with maximum structural efficiency. For additional strength and rigidity, the dome frame was reinforced with horizontal circular poles around the perimeter at different heights. They were carefully tied to the main vertical arches with strong ropes made of linden bark or long, flexible roots of coniferous trees soaked in water. The entire structure was tied together into a single organic whole, capable of withstanding the considerable weight of heavy snow in winter and strong gusts of wind without deformation. The tying was an art. The knots had to hold for years without coming undone from moisture and frost, which required knowledge of weaving techniques. When the sturdy frame was completely ready and tested, it was covered with a protective layer. The covering material depended largely on the season and the natural resources available locally in the surrounding area. The best and most prestigious covering material was considered to be birch bark. White birch bark, a universal material used by forest peoples. Birch bark was the skin of the forest from which everything was made, from boats to houses. It was a gift from the birch, a sacred tree. Large, wide strips of birch bark were carefully removed from living trees in the spring, when the sap was moving and it was most flexible and pliable for removal. These large sheets of bark were both tear-resistant, lightweight, and completely waterproof thanks to the natural resins in their structure. They were methodically laid on the frame in an overlapping manner, similar to modern tiles, providing reliable multi-layer protection from heavy rain and snow. Birch bark did not rot for years, repelling water like duck feathers. The natural waterproofing created by the tree for its own protection now served humans. In the summer during hot weather, wigwams could be covered with light mats, skillfully woven from reeds from swamps or dried grass. These breathable mats allowed air and breeze to pass through, creating pleasant coolness and ventilation inside the dwelling. In winter, however, several thick layers of covering were used for maximum insulation from the cold. One layer was not enough. Multi-layering was the key. Each layer added an air gap, multiplying the insulation not by addition, but by multiplication of efficiency. In winter, the lower layer of woven mats made of cattail or grass was first laid on the frame for softness, and on top of them, the upper layer of thick bark sheets to protect against moisture and wind. Sometimes the outside of the structure was additionally insulated with moss, stuffed into the cracks, dry grass, or sprinkled with earth and snow at the base around the perimeter for sealing. Inside, as in the teepees of the steppe dwellers, there could be an additional inner lining of animal skins, creating an air gap. The principle of double walls discovered independently by different cultures as the optimal solution. In the center of the dome roof, a smoke hole was always left above the central hearth for smoke to escape. It could be partially covered with a piece of bark on a pole in case of heavy rain or snowfall, regulating the draft. The entrance to the wigwam was also covered with a heavy skin or special thick mat, which served as a door on hinges. The door was a movable boundary between the inner and outer worlds. When open, it invited entry. When closed, it demanded respect for privacy. The construction of a wigwam was a collective effort of the entire community or extended family. Men harvested long poles in the forest and erected a heavy frame that required strength. Women wove mats from grasses on winter evenings and laid the covering on the frame, securing it in place. The division of labor was effective. Everyone did what they did best, and together they built a house faster than one person could have done in weeks. What if I showed you a house that breathed? The secret to the wigwam's effectiveness lay largely in the unique properties of its main covering, birch bark. This material, gifted by the forest, was a true high-tech membrane of its time. Birch bark has an amazing property. It does not let water through. Its structure contains natural resins and waxes that make it completely waterproof. Even in the heaviest downpour, the inside of a wigwam covered with birch bark remained dry. At the same time, the bark was vapor permeable, allowing moist air to escape. This prevented condensation from forming on the interior walls of the dwelling. Thanks to this property, a healthy microclimate without dampness was maintained inside. Birch bark is also an excellent heat insulator. Its multi-layered structure with air pores slows down heat transfer. In winter, it helped to keep the heat from the hearth inside, and in summer, it protected from the scorching sun. This material was incredibly strong and durable. Properly harvested and laid bark could serve as a covering for a house for several years. It did not rot, was resistant to temperature changes, and did not crack in the cold. The bark was removed in large layers, taking care not to damage the tree itself. This was an example of a careful attitude towards nature. Only what was needed was taken, and in such a way as not to cause harm. These layers could then be sewn or glued together with resin. In addition to roofing for dwellings, birch bark was used to make many other things. Lightweight and durable canoes, dishes, containers for storing food. This versatile material was an integral part of the daily life of forest tribes. The flexibility of the bark allowed it to be used on the curved surfaces of dome-shaped wigwams. It easily conformed to the frame, repeating its shape. This ensured a tight fit and no gaps. The combination of a sturdy frame and multifunctional covering made the wigwam an ideal dwelling for a sedentary or semi-sedentary life in a forest area. It was warm, dry, and durable. It was a house built from the very heart of the forest. What do you think the interior of such houses look like? In the next chapter, we will take a look inside and see how the Native Americans lived. The interior space of the tepee and wigwam was organized very rationally, thoughtfully and comfortably, despite its modest size. The center of all life was always the hearth, a source of heat, light, and food. It was strategically located right on the compacted earthen floor in the center, slightly closer to the entrance, so that the smoke could be drawn out more easily and quickly through the opening in the roof in a straight line. The location of the hearth was not arbitrary, but the result of an understanding of the dynamics of smoke and air currents. Too close to the center meant smoke, too close to the entrance meant cold, so balance was critical. The fire in the hearth not only provided vital heat for warmth and light to illuminate the darkness, but also the ability to cook hot food for nourishment. A pot or cauldron for cooking soups could be hung over it on a tripod, or flat hot stones could be placed on it for roasting meat. The smoke from smoldering herbs effectively repelled annoying insects, mosquitoes and midges, in the summer and helped smoke meat and fish for long-term storage in the winter. Fire was a multifunctional tool, a heater, stove, light, preservative, and repellent all at once, the center of the family's entire existence. Individual sleeping places for all inhabitants were arranged in a circle or semicircle around the hearth. These were usually low-raised platforms made of branches and poles 20-30 centimeters high, raised above the cold, damp ground for insulation. First, a thick, elastic layer of soft fir or pine branches was laid on these sturdy platforms to cushion the body and provide a pleasant, coniferous aroma that repelled insects. The needles were a natural mattress and air freshener, creating comfort and freshness at no cost. A gift from the forest, renewed every season. Several layers of warm skins were carefully laid on top of the layer of fragrant branches for softness and warmth. Bear or bison skins with thick, long fur served as both mattresses for sleeping and blankets for covering. Such a multi-layered bed was very warm thanks to the fur and comfortable for the back even in severe frosts, down to -30 outside. The fur created air pockets that retained body heat. Natural insulation, created by nature for animals, now served humans unchanged. The space inside the dwelling was clearly socially zoned according to the rules of etiquette. Each family in a large dwelling or a member of a small family had their own specific permanent place by the walls. The space opposite the entrance, furthest from the door and the cold, was considered honorable and respected, and was intended for the head of the family or honored guests as a sign of respect. The place determined the status. The further from the entrance and closer to the back wall, the higher the position in the hierarchy of the family or tribe. It was a visible expression of the social structure. Along the walls around the perimeter, behind and above the sleeping places, the family's personal belongings were carefully stored. They were placed in special spacious bags made of rawhide, decorated with geometric patterns and beads for beauty. There could also be backrests, convenient devices made of flexible willow rods, which could be leaned on and used as support while sitting on the floor without chairs. Furniture was minimal. Why have chairs when there is the ground and animal skins, when sitting on the floor was natural and comfortable for people who had been accustomed to it since childhood? The floors in the dwelling were also insulated for the comfort of the feet. The cold ground was first covered with a thick layer of dry grass or fallen pine needles to insulate it from the cold and moisture, and then completely covered with woven mats or additional skins over the entire area. Walking barefoot on such a soft, warm floor was pleasant and not cold even in winter. The multi-layered floor was as important as the multi-layered walls. Each layer added insulation, cutting off the cold of the ground from the warmth of the body step by step. At night, the dwelling was lit only by the natural fire from the hearth, without any additional sources. Its dancing, living reflections on the walls created a special atmosphere of comfort, warmth, and protection from the darkness outside. On long, dark evenings, families gathered closely around the fire, engaged in crafts, weaving baskets, repairing tools, sewing clothes, and telling stories of their ancestors and legends. The fire was a television, a book, and a conversation partner. Contemplating it calmed the mind and united the family in a circle of light amid the darkness, creating a sense of unity and security. Despite the apparent simplicity and minimalism, the interior decoration was thought out to the smallest detail by generations of experience. Each item had its own specific place and practical purpose. There was nothing superfluous. It was a maximally functional and harmonious space for living. Form followed function. Beauty was born of practicality, not the other way around. Aesthetics were a byproduct of efficiency, not an end in themselves. All daily life took place in full view of all family members in a shared space, which naturally contributed to strengthening social ties and unity. The home was not just a physical shelter from the elements, but the center of family and community life, a place where knowledge, values, and traditions were passed on. The space shaped relationships. The inability to be alone taught tolerance and respect, the need for cooperation for the survival of all. With the onset of harsh winters, Native Americans took additional thoughtful measures to insulate their homes from the cold as much as possible. They wisely used the main natural insulator available to them: snow, turning their enemy into an ally. Around the base of a tepee or wigwam, they deliberately piled up a high, dense snowdrift around the entire perimeter, up to a meter or more in height. This was not laziness in clearing the snow, but a conscious insulation strategy. Every shovel of snow thrown onto the walls was a brick in the wall against the cold, adding degrees of warmth inside. Snow, thanks to its porous structure with 90% air between the crystals, is an excellent natural insulator, comparable to modern materials. It reliably blocked any drafts at the base and physically prevented cold wind from penetrating under the lower edge of the roof into the dwelling. The more snow fell and the higher the snowdrift, the warmer it became in the dwelling, a direct relationship that everyone understands from experience. Snow was winter's gift for protection from winter, a paradox but a reality of thermodynamics. The lower edge of the dwelling's covering was carefully pressed against the ground to seal it. For this purpose, heavy stones weighing tens of kilograms or thick logs were used, which were laid around the entire perimeter outside to press it down. Sometimes the edge of the covering was even buried with loose soil or sand to ensure complete sealing without gaps. Every gap at the base was a loss of heat that had to be eliminated by any means necessary. Sealing was not a luxury, but a necessity for survival in -30 degrees. The inner lining or curtain, which we mentioned earlier, played a key critical role in winter insulation of the entire system. An air gap tens of centimeters thick between it and the main outer wall effectively prevented the internal heat from the hearth and bodies from escaping outside through the walls. This ancient technology of double walls with an air gap is used in modern, double-glazed windows and thermoses. The principle has not changed for millennia, only the materials have changed. A double wall with air between the layers was a thermos for the house, retaining heat for hours after the fire had died down. The floor also required special attention in winter. In winter, a thick layer of insulation made of dry grass and pine needles was made much thicker than in summer, half a meter instead of 10 centimeters. Sometimes a small round depression, 20-30 centimeter deep, was specially dug in the earthen floor for the hearth, so that it was below the level of the sleeping places on the platforms. This provided additional protection from the heat for children and allowed cold air to accumulate in the pit, rather than at the breathing level of those sleeping. The depression was a trap for cold air, which, according to the laws of physics, sank down, leaving the upper tier warm. The entrance to the dwelling was protected especially carefully and with multiple layers in winter. Often, a small additional vestibule or tunnel, 1 to 2 meters long, was specially made in front of the main entrance, from branches and stretched skins. This vestibule effectively cut off the direct flow of cold air when people entered and exited, acting as an airlock. The cold remained in the vestibule, not penetrating further into the living space. The double door was much more effective than a single door, creating a buffer zone of variable pressure. A large amount of firewood was required to heat the dwelling continuously, tons of it per winter. It was harvested in advance, during the warm summer and autumn, and neatly stacked in wood piles next to the dwelling for quick access. Keeping the fire burning continuously was a constant and vital task on which everyone's life depended. The fire was tended around the clock. A dead fire meant rapid freezing and possible death, so someone always watched the flames, throwing wood on them. In some cultures of sedentary peoples, such as the Iroquois, who built long communal houses, wachira, tens of meters long, several hearths were used simultaneously along the central passageway. Several dozen families, up to 100 people, could live comfortably in one such huge house, and each pair of families had their own shared fire for cooking and heating. This created a powerful distributed heat source that evenly heated the entire space from one end to the other. Multiple hearths were more effective than one large one. The heat was distributed more evenly, leaving no cold areas in the far corners of the longhouse. During heavy snowstorms and blizzards, life in camps and villages came to a complete standstill. People wisely tried not to leave their warm and safe shelters unless absolutely necessary. Inside, by the burning fire, they could safely wait out any weather for days and weeks, with pre-prepared supplies of food and fuel at hand. Survival depended on preparation. Those who stocked up in the summer lived through the winter, while those who were lazy died of hunger or cold in February. These simple but extremely effective methods of insulation allowed them to maintain a comfortable temperature of around 0 or above inside the house, even when a blizzard was raging outside with temperatures of -30 and below. It was a refined system of survival, honed by centuries of trial and error, where mistakes cost lives and successful solutions were passed down from generation to generation as sacred knowledge. In winter, the nomadic tribes of the plains stopped their long journeys and set up permanent winter camps. The choice of location for such a camp was critical. It was usually located in a river valley, protected from the wind by hills or dense forest. Proximity to water was a must. The river not only provided drinking water, but also allowed the horses to drink. In addition, poplar trees grew in the river floodplains, and their bark could be fed to animals during the winter. The location of dwellings in the camp was not random. Tipis were arranged in a large circle, symbolizing the circle of life and the unity of the tribe. The entrance to the circle and the entrances to all tipis traditionally faced east. This circular arrangement also had a practical purpose. It created a wind-protected inner space where children could play and where the most valuable horses were kept. The tents of the chiefs and the council could be located in the center of the circle. Inside the large circle, families placed their tipis in groups, depending on kinship ties. This created a camp within a camp structure, strengthening social ties. Winter was a time for socializing, ceremonies, and storytelling. Forest tribes who were more sedentary also carefully chose locations for their villages. They were located on high ground for better protection or near lakes rich in fish. In winter, life centered around warm wigwams or longhouses. Iroquois longhouses were true apartment buildings. Dozens of relatives belonging to the same clan could live under one bark roof. Such a house could be up to 100 meters long. Inside the longhouse, each family had its own compartment with sleeping platforms and a hearth. Smoke from several hearths escaped through openings in the roof. This communal lifestyle allowed for the conservation of heat and resources. Thus, the architecture of the winter settlement was not only engineering, but also social. It reflected the structure of society, its values and beliefs. The house was part of a larger whole, a community that survived only through unity and mutual assistance. The choice of location, the layout of the dwellings and their construction were all subordinated to one goal: to survive the long and harsh winter. It was a survival strategy not for individual families, but for the entire people. For Native Americans, their home was not just a shelter from the elements. It was a sacred space, a microcosm reflecting the structure of the universe. Every element of the structure was imbued with deep symbolic meaning. For the Plains tribes, the floor of the teepee symbolized Mother Earth, from whom all received food and life. The walls rising upward represented the sky, and the poles of the frame were the paths connecting the earth with the spirit world. The hearth in the center was the heart of the home, its life force. Fire was considered sacred. It provided warmth and light, uniting the family. The smoke rising from the hearth to the sky carried prayers and requests to the Great Spirit. The round shape of the teepee's base symbolized the cycle of life without beginning or end. It also reflected the shape of the horizon, the sun, and the moon. The whole world around was perceived as a series of circles, and the house was one of them. The interior also had its own symbolism. The altar, located opposite the entrance, was a place for sacred objects. Each side of the world had its own meaning and its own guardian spirits. The paintings on the teepee's covering were not just decoration. They could tell the story of the family, depict the visions of its owner, or serve as a protective symbol. Drawings of animals endowed the dwelling with the strength and spirit of that animal. For forest tribes, the dome of the wigwam was also associated with the sky. The frame of bent trees reminded them of the unity and interconnectedness of all living things in the forest. The house was part of the natural world, not something separate from it. The construction of a new house was accompanied by special rituals and ceremonies. The consecration of the dwelling was an important event, ensuring the well-being and protection of its future inhabitants. It was not only an act of construction, but also of creation. Thus, the Indian dwelling was both practical and spiritual. It was a machine for survival in a temple, a place for everyday life, and a place for prayer. This duality made it truly unique. We can see that the traditional winter dwellings of Native Americans were the result of thousands of years of experience and a deep understanding of the laws of nature. Tipis and wigwams are not primitive huts, but complex, adaptive systems, ingenious in their simplicity. They were warm, mobile, environmentally friendly, and filled with spiritual meaning. Behind every detail, from the smoke vents of the teepee to the breathing bark of the wigwam, lies the wisdom of generations who lived in complete harmony with the world around them. These homes were the perfect answer to the challenges of the harsh climate, allowing people not only to survive, but to thrive. Their history is a tribute to human ingenuity and respect for nature. What other aspects of the life and culture of the indigenous peoples of North America would you like to see in future videos? Suggest your topics in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on new exciting journeys into the past.